So just get yourself into I'm sure you're already in a comfortable position, but just remember that whatever position you've adopted, you don't have to be stuck with it throughout this practice. This is a practice where we remind ourselves how to be kind to ourselves, simply because there are enough things out there that we have to do. There are many duties, roles that we have to play, have tos, cannot do's. And in this practice, we want to be as easy, as flexible, as kind as we can to ourselves, which means you can also leave the practice at any point, knowing that it's there on YouTube or there's always the next practice tomorrow. And just in case any of you are joining in from Jamyang, there are additional sessions which are on Mondays and Wednesdays, which are not on the Jamyang calendar. So please feel free to find them on mindfulness.zone. Are we comfortable? How's the spine doing? The spine that forms the frame, the center of our bodies, that which seems to hold our heads upright, that upon which the shoulders appear to balance themselves on, the spinal column resting on the pelvic bone. Give your spine a little bit of a stretch because as we know, there are lots of fluids within the spinal column, nerves that carry electrical charges. And so stretch your spine by moving the top end upward and digging the tail end downward. And you'll find yourself becoming a little bit more alert, maybe even a little bit more comfortable because your body begins to balance itself more than effort itself into this posture. And then you're putting together what your posture feels like, this posture that you have adopted. Most of us are seated, sitting down. Some of us might be lying down. And you can release labels such as meditation, mindfulness, so that your practice becomes one of either sitting or lying down, giving yourself a bit of a break. And the first thing that begins to dawn on us is that we're giving ourselves a break from physical movement. As you feel your body becoming more still than a few moments ago, this body that is beginning to settle down on these chairs, these cushions, these mattresses. But it's still not quite a complete break, is it? Because the mind is still moving. And more often than not, we find ourselves still being carried by its momentum. That's what we call this movement that we find. And if you bring back those old science classes, what does momentum mean? It's a little bit like a car that's moving at a very high speed. And when you begin to apply the brakes, It becomes very uncomfortable depending on how tightly you apply the brakes. You find the momentum still carrying you forward. And sometimes you even find the car skidding if you slam on the brakes and you lose control and there's a crash. And this is where we remind ourselves that this is not the way in which this meditation works. And so you don't have to stop the mind from working. You don't have to stop the mind from moving. You simply begin by recognizing how identified you are, how identified I am with my mind. And this was very apparent, very clear during yesterday's practice. Because yesterday evening we had a practice and I managed to discipline myself quite well by switching off all my devices, silencing all of my devices. And then I forgot to silence my watch, which is linked to my phone. And halfway through the practice, my watch went off with an incoming call. And most of us here, at least I did, I found myself being jolted out of the practice, feeling embarrassed, wishing I had more. I wishing I switched off the watch or silenced it, feeling bad for the participants. And then what followed was something quite beautiful because we transformed the ringing of the phone into a precious tool in the practice. Just to remind ourselves how identified we were with our minds. Because up until that moment, things were quietening down, things were silent. There was stillness, there was kindness, we were really into the practice, and then the phone went off. And then I noticed all these thoughts arising within my own experience. And it was a reminder of how identified I still was with my mind. And I shared that thought, that contemplation with the other participants. And we all reminded ourselves that this is what real life is like. Unexpected things, or sometimes even expected things happening that activate the mind, that disturb the mind. But in this practice, we begin to recognize how the real issue is our identification with the mind. And instead of allowing that phone call to hinder the practice, we used it as a reminder of how identified we sometimes can be with our minds, and that this practice is about rising above our thoughts. I'll ring the bell now so that we can all rise above our thoughts together. And if you're a more visual person, just imagine one of those aeroplanes. Many of us haven't been in aeroplanes for quite a long time. But there is this brief moment after the plane takes off that it has to go through this thick layer of clouds. There's turbulence. Everything clouds up outside of our windows. Let's just imagine this to be what it's like to be identified with the mind. It's a little bit shaky, it's a little bit misty, we lack clarity. And then what happens when we break through the clouds? Now rise above the clouds, rise above the mind, which is what this practice is truly about. So that if my phone were to ring, if my cats were to have tantrums, if something were to happen around you of a similar nature, you will be affected, but to a lesser degree. You may even be able to observe the mind as it gets stimulated, as storms begin to brew, but observing it from above, almost as though you were not even an aeroplane, but one of those weather satellites high up in the atmosphere, watching the build-up of the clouds, watching the way in which they circle. Developing the ability to even convey a report of this phenomena occurring, teeth grinding, certain muscles tightening, turbulence occurring. But observing this from a space that is so much more vaster, so much more kinder, a space beyond time, where you no longer need to react the way you have reacted all through your life to that particular stimuli. Instead, observing this build-up of clouds, observing the clarity ahead, observing the events from the past, all from this new vantage point, from this satellite far beyond the atmosphere, knowing that the storm will pass, knowing of the clear skies ahead, sitting, breathing, observing, witnessing. And simply because of the clarity from this vantage point, from this space where everything is clear, through identification with this space that is filled with kindness, which is filled with wisdom, the next step becomes crystal clear. Sometimes there is a next step, and sometimes it's simply staying still and not taking that step, not reacting. And you're already a master at this. You already are a master at this. We just do not give ourselves enough credit. Because on Sunday, when I practiced with some fellow practitioners at the Buddhist temple, we reminded ourselves many of us had done work in prisons before, and how the prisons were filled with wonderful, nice, kind people who simply reacted at one particular point in their life. Of course, I'm speaking very generally, but very often when you got to know them, deeply kind, deeply compassionate people who were simply triggered at a particular moment and acted through impulses, which is why many people who knew them often say that it was outside of their character. Of course, I'm making a general statement, but do you remember how you, me, we've all been put in positions where we wanted to react but didn't? Sometimes it was we wanted to say something, sometimes we wanted to act something out, but there was enough space between ourselves and our mind that we knew the consequences of the action or the words and therefore regained balance and control, not reacting. And this is how we remind ourselves and give ourselves credit for already being able to practice. We have the ability, and now through this practice, we build our muscles. We practice and we practice, and through practice, begin the process of separating ourselves from our habits, habits contained within the conditioned, trained mind. And we come back to a definition of the mind by a teacher, a wonderful teacher whom I would recommend reading or listening to, Michael Singer. How he defines the mind as an energy field that can be programmed. In fact, it is an energy field that has already been programmed by its parents, its guardians, its teachers, books, magazines, movies, you know the drill. But it's a program. And so very often when we identify ourselves with the mind, we're simply acting out the program. But he reminds us, as do most of the other teachers, that this program can be rewritten, but it cannot be rewritten from within, which is where this practice helps us to step beyond the mind, observe, witness, discover how within those patterns there are little droplets, gems, pearls that we might focus on. And through refocusing, begin the process whereby we reprogram, becoming the very beings we were always meant to be. filled with kindness, wisdom, understanding, and a kind of patience that transcends time. No longer needing to be anywhere other than where we are. Simply understanding how every destination is simply a doorway into a new journey, a journey that continues onwards and onwards as we expand, becoming kinder and kinder and kinder as life presents its various and differing experiences to us. Where is this space? Where is this space that surrounds the mind? Where is this space of clarity and kindness and wisdom that appears to surround these clouds? It is the present moment. And it is very difficult to understand and comprehend with our minds simply because the mind is linear based. It exists within that concept called time. And so instead of attempting to understand it or make sense of it, let us together enter into the present moment. The key being together. And it begins with our individuality, how unique, how different each and every one of us in this virtual meditation room is. Each with a unique personality, each having attended a different school, a different set of parents, different interests, different hobbies, different likes, different dislikes, all contributing to the program that is running right now. And you can give that program your name. My program is called Vinod. Each and every one of you. Now imagine that program to be a stream, like a stream flowing. And you are observing this stream through this lens of the satellite. But you can tell how fast or how slow your mind is moving. And so you can give it permission to be a whitewater rapid, or you can let it be calm and still, just as you find it. And you release the need to build a dam, to divert the flow, to stop the flow. You just allow, give it permission, because it no longer matters. You have the vantage point of the satellite. You are above, high up above the stream. And the stream, it carries with it droplets of light, it reflects light, it has sounds, and you can hear the sounds, the voices, the images. You can allow all of this and find the edge, each and every one of us. Our stream reaching an edge, a cliff, whereby it begins to pour into a giant bottomless lake called the present moment. And it simply drops vertically now. Isn't that what our lives are like? when we relate to time, when we identify with the mind, it's a horizontal line. Just like the stream that was 5 years ago, 5 days ago, 5 hours ago, 5 minutes ago, 5 seconds ago. And then we project ourselves into the future 5 minutes from now, 5 years from now, a horizontal line. But now, exactly now, it drops into the present moment, which is a vertical line. No top, no bottom, always the present moment. Feel yourself falling, entering into this present moment, almost as though you are once again landing on your cushions and your chairs and your seats. You were finally arriving. Your mind arriving into the present moment where your body is. This present moment you experienced as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, and wherever it is you may be right now. Always the present moment, releasing the future, for it can only be experienced as the present moment. And we will allow ourselves to simply arrive here, releasing the future, releasing the past. The stillness, the silence of this present moment, revealing itself to us. And I don't mean audible silence, because there are still sounds around us. There are still sounds unfolding within us. But we are allowing all of these sounds, all of these sensations, including the mind with its movements. And this stream that has become a vertical waterfall, it reaches the lake. And initially there are bubbles, there's froth, there's turbulence. There's movement, there are ripples, there are waves. But we have discovered a new momentum. And this is the momentum we have created together in this group. All of us merging together, tapping into the present moment together, where when one of us gets lost, this new momentum brings us back, brings you back, brings me back. Perhaps a reason why we practice as a group sometimes, to build this momentum so that when we move into our own individual practices, we carry this momentum. And it is not only the 9 of us that creates this momentum. We tap into the present moment of the blade of grass and the blade of grass next to that blade. We tap into the present moment of the leaves on the trees and the branches and the trees. And we tap into the present moment of the birds that nest on the tree and the squirrels that play, and every wild animal, every cloud, every planet, every moon, every grain of sand, every rock. Everything that exists in the present moment. Soon you'll discover it is only us human beings that have the ability to take ourselves away from the present moment through our minds, which is why we love our animals, which is why we love nature. They bring us back into the present moment. They remind us who we truly are. Let us bask in this lake. But let the surface of this lake represent the skin on your body. How above this lake there are weather patterns, there are winds, there may be all manner of birds, even boats, possibly ships, all that affect the ripples and the waves and the currents on the surface. Let's for a moment imagine this to be this world outside of us. And initially, for many of us, we've tried controlling, we've tried buying new things in order to be happy. We've moved from relationship to relationship. We've been through all sorts of diets and exercise regimes, taken all sorts of nutritional foods to bring balance to our bodies. And sometimes still finding little gaps which haven't quite brought us to that space of equilibrium and consistent balance that we would like. Let us now, instead of attempting to change anything, and there are no changes right now, no changes happening around you because all you're doing is sitting with you, possibly with your eyes closed, breathing. You're not adjusting the lighting, you're not turning the television on and off, you're not shopping, you're not on some dating website. Nothing around you is going to change. Let's simply begin by allowing everything around us to be exactly as it is. Simply because you don't really have a choice. Just giving it permission. And in this visualization of being on the surface of the lake, it's a little bit like letting the boats sail by, letting the ducks play, letting the birds land and swim and dive. No longer trying to control anything, letting the wind blow, letting the ripples appear, not even trying to stop the ripples, which has become very tiring and exhausting. Allowing, which is why many teachers refer to this practice simply as the art of allowing the present moment. An art simply because it's constantly changing, never repeating itself. In the background, I can hear a strong wind blowing past my window. And that's never happened before, not in this way, not while I'm doing this particular practice, not while I'm saying these particular words. And so we allow, and instead of trying to stop the ripples, you're like a little balloon floating on the surface, bouncing from one wave to the other, one ripple to the other, allowing, enjoying the freedom. And now bringing your attention to a very precious tool that will help us to anchor ourselves a little bit more deeply into the present moment. And this is our breath. And so bring your attention to your breath. The breath that is invisible, the breath that we almost always seem to forget about, the breath which we seem to simply take for granted. But now, becoming more aware of the breath than we usually are, tuning into the temperature of the breath that enters and then leaves, noticing the rise in temperature, experiencing the humidity levels, its crispness as we breathe in, and then its increased heaviness and humidity as we breathe out. What's also happening as you become more aware of your breath, what's also happening is that you're inviting your mind, which very often is still in the stream, still pouring, still at the surface. You're inviting the mind to help you translate the sensations that you're experiencing within your nostrils, within your nasal passage. Because it is, of course, the mind that learned what humidity levels are, what warmth is, what coolness is. It's also the mind that tells you that this is an in-breath, this is an exhalation and out-breath. And you begin diving into the present moment. Simply because your mind leaves the stream in order to focus on these sensations, in order to translate these sensations. And you enter into this space, perhaps a little bit more completely than a few moments ago. But now it's time to explore the depths within this lake, which we will soon discover to be bottomless. As we use our breath as bridges connecting these two worlds within which we exist. This world outside of us, whether it's shopping, whether are the relationships, whether it's television and books and parents and children's and friends and relationships, all constantly changing. Phones going off, cats meowing, constantly changing. But let us now breathe in and dive underneath the surface. And follow your breath. Just follow your breath inwards, up the nasal passage, where it bends downwards, where the breath flows down through the throat, filling up the lungs. It's a lot quieter, isn't it? With the next breath following even deeper down into the stomach, where you find the stomach wall rising as you breathe in, where you find the stomach wall falling as you breathe out. Soon discovering how each intake of breath propels you even deeper and deeper and deeper into this lake of kindness, of wisdom, of just being the perfect being you have always been, no longer needing to change anything outside of you, a knowing, an understanding as this knowing sinks deeper and deeper into the core of your being. Sometimes many of us feel very uncomfortable when we hear the words perfection being bestowed upon us. Because many of the programs, many of the streams, when we listen to them, all we remember, all we are told is you need to be something different, you need to have something else, you need to change in order to be perfect. And for this, again, I'm reminded of a beautiful story narrated by a teacher whom I love to quote, Wayne Dyer. How Wayne Dyer speaks about how he was in a hotel, and there was a life coach called Tony Robbins, whom many of you might know of, or even attended workshops by him. And Tony Robbins was a big fan of Wayne Dyer. And so he was invited to give a keynote address just spontaneously at the convention. Wayne Dyer was invited, that is. And when he turned up, he saw everybody with a t-shirt, and there were very motivational lines on the t-shirt saying that if you do this, you will be great. In order to be great, you need to achieve something. And that's, in many ways, that's how many of us have been brought up. Our school systems getting us to compete against one another, our parents comparing us with cousins and siblings, and their definitions of success and failure. The whole advertising industry telling us what we need to own in order to be happy. And so he looked, he saw these statements, he saw the way in which these teachings were being brought to the thousands of participants, that they needed to achieve something in order to be great. And so when he moved onto the stage, he said, "My approach is a little bit different. I want you to know that you're already great. You're already perfect. There's nothing you need to change. It's your right. You were born this way. Now that you know you are great, now that you know you are perfect, go ahead and do what you need to do. Contemplate on these words as you allow your breath to take you even deeper into this perfection. This presence, this space of kindness and awareness. Remembering maybe one life, maybe two lives, maybe even three lives that you might have touched. And sometimes it might even be in a negative way, but reminding yourself that every experience has a purpose, and therefore not judging it as positive or negative, but understanding that just by being here, you have influenced someone, changed the life of a worm, an animal, someone you might care about, or sometimes a complete stranger just with a smile, with a word of kindness. It's already happened and created a new ripple in their reality where they were kinder to someone else. And sometimes it may not be that clear, but it has happened. And let this be the starting point in simply being, recognizing this perfection, this beingness, and having dipped into the stillness, having dipped ourselves into this kindness, and this wisdom, now allowing yourself to resurface back onto the surface of this lake. Experiencing this world around us through the lens of this experience called kindness and stillness and wisdom. Being a part of this new momentum called the present moment. And now a bell to take us into the next and final part of this practice. Also an opportunity to stretch, to move, to have a sip of water. And now, using our mind's eye, a visualization, an image of a mountain, which is perhaps one of the oldest of structures within this planet we call our home, this planet called Earth. And also recognize, as you bring into your mind's eye this image of your ability to now direct your mind. You, the witness, the being, the presence, reigns over the mind with the ability to direct the mind. And here at this moment, you direct the mind to bring about memories so as to construct. And now feel your body transforming itself and becoming this great rock, so that your shoulders become sides of the mountain, your chest and your back, the remaining sides. Notice the way in which your body widens itself towards the pelvic region, giving you the ability to stabilize. Just like the mountain, how it gets wider and wider. And then recognizing something so much deeper, that it is only a small fraction that is of the mountain that is visible to the naked eye. For this mountain, it moves deep into the earth, merging into other rock formations, other mountains, continents, the crust of the earth, the base of the oceans and the seas, and the lakes and the rivers. One continuous, connected being. This is where we discover the truths, or rather explore and contemplate on the truths verbalized and described by our ancient civilizations, our aboriginal belief systems, of that deep and intrinsic connection between each and every one of us and this magnificent planet we call our home. And so lower your center of gravity so that it moves through the cushions and the chairs, through the deep into the flooring, deep into the earth, so that you begin to feel your oneness with the planet. Your body made up of pretty much all of the elements found on this earth, sitting, breathing rock of stable, balancing awareness. One that is quite separate from the clouds that seem to pass by in the sky. One that is quite separate from the weather patterns and the changing seasons and the changing light patterns in the sky around and outside of us. No sunrise, no two sunrises exactly the same or alike, no two sunsets identical. The only one constant, this beingness of the present moment, which we breathe and experience the breath as it moves in through the nostrils and deep down through our bodies into the very crust of this earth. Feeling the oneness, not only with this rock underneath us, but the way in which it connects us to each other, the way in which it connects us to every tree, every plant, every animal life form, both living and gone. Just sitting, just breathing and finding beauty in the differences between each and every one of us. The same way in which the mountain sees beauty in every other peak, never attempting to duplicate or change itself or change the other peaks, allowing. And now the final bell. Final only because it brings this 1 hour to a close. But always a new beginning, an opportunity for us to bring this awareness, this kindness, this stillness, this beingness with us as we allow the day to unfold before us like a seed, understanding the value within the seed and the young plant and the larger plant until it is a full grown tree, never seeing one part as more important than the next, stepping out of and beyond time, understanding through this wisdom that there is only the present moment. And here it is, right now. Thank you. Thank you all for joining in today's practice. I hope it was all right. Take care.
That was beautiful, Binoy. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad. It's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Binoy. Will there be a session on Thursday this week?
Not on Thursday, but there is one tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. It was very nice.
It's a pleasure.
Bye, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Love to you all. Bye.
Bye.
Pleasure.